All right, good afternoon. This morning, the Secretary General spoke at an event to mark the World Day Against the Death Penalty and said this barbaric practice has no place in the 21st century. He called on countries to continue to use it to stop executions. He praised the progress that had been made so far, with 170 countries having either abolished or stopped using the death penalty. However, he also warned that in many countries, governments conceal executions and enforce an elaborate system of secrecy to hide who is on death row. And he said that this lack of transparency shows a lack of respect for the human rights of those sentenced to death and their families. Full and accurate data is vital to policymakers and the general public and is fundamental to the debate around the death penalty and its impacts. The UN Human Rights Office also released a statement to mark the day, and that's available online. This morning, the Secretary General's Special Envoy for Yemen, Ismail ul-Sheikh Ahmed, briefed the Security Council and stressed that the parties to the conflict are pursuing a futile and cruel military conflict while the country's people are suffering from an entirely man-made catastrophe. The Special Envoy said there are no winners in the battlefield and the losers are the Yemeni people who are suffering as a result of the war. For his part, John Ging, the Director of Operations for OCHA, pointed to three main challenges on Yemen: the lack of humanitarian access, the impact of salary interruptions for civil servants in critical services, and continued risks to commercial access to the country. Mr. Ging said $2.3 billion humanitarian response plan is 55% funded. Their full remarks are available in our office, and we understand both Mr. Ging and Ismail ul-Sheikh Ahmed will speak to you at the Security Council stakeout shortly. And regarding Syria, we continue to be alarmed over the impact of ongoing fighting and airstrikes on civilians and civilian infrastructure in DEIR governorate. Between 1st and the 8th of October, some 95,000 men, women, and children were reportedly displaced to 60 locations within the governorate, as well as the nearby governorates of Al-Hasakeh, Al-Raqqa, and Aleppo due to fighting. 15,000 residents of the city of Al-Mayadeen and surrounding areas are reported without access to health services following a string of reported airstrikes on the city, which have rendered all hospitals and medical points in the city inoperable. Meanwhile, more than 6 years of hostilities have left less than half of Syria's health facilities fully operational, contributing to thousands of avoidable deaths from injury or illness. And our humanitarian colleagues tell us that more than 11,000 Rohingyas crossed into Bangladesh from Myanmar yesterday. Exact figures are not available due to restrictions to access in Myanmar's Rakhine state, but we still estimate that 519,000 Rohingya refugees have now fled since August 25th. UNHCR says many of yesterday's new arrivals came from Butingdong area in northern Rakhine. Some of these people said they had fled torching and killings, while others said they had left in fear of violence. The new arrivals are now in camps and settlements where UNHCR has trucked in plastic sheets and jerry cans. And as we mentioned to you yesterday, WHO, together with UNICEF and the Bangladeshi government, are leading the second largest oral cholera vaccination campaign ever, which kicked off in Cox's Bazar. 200 mobile teams will deliver 900,000 doses of the vaccines. And from Dominica, our colleagues at the International Organization of Migration are continuing to deliver supplies to those affected by Hurricane Maria. The agency is currently hoping to distribute items like solar lights, water purification supplies, kitchens, and hygiene kits. It's also supporting the governments in efforts to provide shelter, which has become an urgent need, with an estimated 23% of houses gone and 39% of houses having sustained severe damage, causing thousands of Dominicans to routinely sleep in shelters or with host families while returning to their own homes during the day to salvage their belongings and debris. And FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and its partners today launched a $53 million initiative that will help African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries to halt unsustainable wildlife hunting while strengthening people's livelihoods and food security. And today is also Mental Health Day, which seeks to raise awareness of mental health issues around the world and mobilize efforts in support of mental health. This year's day focusing on mental health in the workplace. According to WHO, a negative working environment may lead to physical and mental health problems, harmful use of substances, absenteeism, and lost productivity. However, employers and managers who put in place initiatives to promote mental health and to support employees who have mental disorders see gains not only in the health of their employees but also in their productivity at work. More information online. And yesterday, I think it was you, Matthew, who asked about the meeting of the Secretary General's meeting with the Foreign Minister of the Philippines. I can confirm to you that the Secretary General met Alan Peter Cayetano on September 29th and discussed the importance of preventing violent extremism in Southeast Asia and globally. The Secretary General thanked the Philippines as ASEAN chair for their efforts to strengthen ASEAN-UN relationships. They also discussed the regional response to the crisis in Rakhine and other issues of mutual concern. Halas. Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Stéphane. As you mentioned, the Secretary General spoke about death penalty and executions, and he denounced the executions and the lack of transparency and secrecy surrounding them. At the same time, he says, today, first, just 4 countries are responsible for 87% of all recorded executions. And he doesn't name those countries. Can you do that?
Sure. According to our colleagues in the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, those 4 countries are China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. Those are the 4, and those are based on figures that the Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees has harvested from various sources. Yes, sir.
So the Parliament of Catalonia is meeting today following the referendum, and one of the options on the table is a unilateral declaration of independence. Does the Secretary General have any message to the Catalan leaders?
No, not beyond what we have said. Well, obviously, we see what is said at the Parliament. As the Secretary General has said, we trust that the democratic institutions of Spain will find a solution. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Stéphane. It's regarding the report of the Secretary General of his mission on good offices in Cyprus. There was no reference to the Turkish refusal to withdraw their troops and guarantees, preventing a solution. Why is that?
Well, I think playing a blame game serves no purpose. The Secretary General was expected to provide as comprehensive as possible report to the Security Council. He also has a responsibility to preserve the confidentiality of the process, especially the discussions held and the proposals tabled by the parties. He has encouraged the parties not to, encouraged the sides and all involved not to engage in a blame game. And the report reflects this approach, and the level of details therein is exactly what is pertinent for such a report.
Steph, I'm not sure if you've seen reports. Thank you. I'm not sure you've seen reports that Kenya's Raila Odinga, the opposition leader, has withdrawn from the rerun of the election later this month, citing a lack of electoral reforms. Is the Secretary General concerned by this development?
Yes, I mean we're following the situation, which is currently unfolding on the ground. We're remaining in contact with the African Union and other stakeholders. From our point of view, we want to stress the importance of dialogue among all the political actors in Kenya, and it is also critical that all political stakeholders send a clear message of peace and restraint to their supporters. Joe, and then we'll go.
Yes, in his statement on the death penalty that you referenced, the Secretary General said, quote, "We are concerned by the trend of reversing longstanding moratoria on the death penalty in cases related to terrorism." So first of all, does that mean that he would rule out the use of the death penalty in all circumstances, even with a convicted terrorist with blood on his hands? And secondly, how would he apply that standard to, let's say, a drone strike on a known terrorist that kills that terrorist. And of course, that is done without any trial. So, does he reconcile the two?
We stand against the death penalty. The Secretary General stands against the death penalty, full stop.
But how would he apply that to the other situation, which results in death?
Well, the other thing I think the UN has expressed its concern about extrajudicial killings. Mr. Lee.
Sure.
And then Linda. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Let's go about Cambodia and then about Cameroon. I asked you last week on Cambodia about this the move to decertify and disband the opposition main opposition party, National Rescue Party. Various other international actors have denounced it. I'm wondering, given the UN's role in Cambodia, what is the UN position on it?
I think, as we've said, we are concerned, and we continue to be concerned about what you could call the narrowing of the democratic space in Cambodia for political parties, for media, and others. It's important that in any place where there's a preparation for elections, there is an environment that's free of intimidation and that is encouraging to political discourse.
Okay, and thanks. And on Cameroon, yesterday when you said that people hadn't known that, people at least in Cameroon hadn't known that this working level team of Mr. Fall had been there. So I wanted to, there's some confusion about where did they go? Were they there during the killings of October 1st and since? And this, when you say that it's just a matter of finding the dates, there's now a major protest or commemoration of the people that have been killed to date set for the 14th. Is he? I guess what I'm wondering is, I see on the website of UNOCO that they say they're playing a good officer's role. How is that? What role are they playing currently? And do they intend to try to go before this? What may be? I
think they will try to go as soon as they possibly can. But I don't have any details on what the previous mission did or so. Linda, and then Jordan, and then we'll go back.
Thanks, Steph. This is regarding Myanmar. You mentioned that there's the exodus is continuing, and I was just wondering if the UN has any information in terms of the level of violence occurring at this point between the government and, I gather, the Rohingyas. And secondly, is there any information if there's any fighting going on between the government and Rohingya militants?
Part of the issue that we've had is the lack of access for humanitarian workers in northern Rakhine State, and the lack of access for human rights colleagues. So we don't have at this point firsthand information on the actual situation of conflict, of fighting. What we are hearing and seeing is what those people who are crossing the border are telling UN colleagues, and what we've seen they've told human rights organizations. But we have no first-hand confirmable information on the first part of your question. Sorry, Jordan. Yeah, then.
Thank you. Actually, on the same subject, on Rohingya, you said your colleagues estimate that there are 519,000 people fled Rakhine area. They all went to Bangladesh, or they went to another areas? This is one.
Yeah.
And second, you said also there is another state next to Rakhine, I forget the name you mentioned, that also they fled either because they fear for their life or because, but also they went to Bangladesh or not. The third one, also on Rakhine, you said that Mr. Gutierrez met with the Prime Minister of Philippines and they discussed, among other things, Rakhine. What Philippines has to do with Rakhine? What can they assist and help in such regard?
Okay, let me take your questions backwards. Obviously, the ongoing crisis we're seeing in Rakhine State has regional implication. The Philippines, the foreign minister, was also here as a representative of the chair of ASEAN, with which Myanmar is a member. So that's one. The numbers that we have that I've been giving are Rohingya refugees who have fled into Bangladesh, right? So others may have gone to other places, but the numbers that I have are Bangladesh. they had come from the place that I said they'd come from was Butindong, which is an area in Rakhine State. It's part of Rakhine. It's not another state. Okay, I think I've answered 3. Yes.
Yeah, this current visa escalation between Turkey and U.S. How does this affect UNHCR's operation in Turkey? And
I'm not aware of any impact on UNHCR's operations in Turkey from the ongoing tensions that we're seeing between the United States and Turkey. Matthew, and then I've been told the French ambassador, Security Council president, will be shortly. Matthew, and then Evelyn. Sorry.
Sure. Thanks for this readout on the Philippines. I guess I could ask whether extrajudicial killings came up. It seems like it's a pretty big issue between the UN system and the Philippines. But really, there was a meeting yesterday, so maybe we can get these related readouts rolling, with the finance minister of Bangladesh held upstairs. And I was sort of hoping that there would be, do you have a readout of that meeting? I noticed that UN electoral expert was there. I wasn't really sure what.
During the meeting it was the finance minister, they discussed the Rohingya issue, and the Secretary General praised Bangladesh for hosting the refugees, and he expressed his solidarity with the country.
And one other readout, there was a meeting, maybe you can get it or get it later today. There was a meeting listed on his schedule with representatives of NGOs, and it didn't say on what topic, but I know that
it was NGOs on to discuss the situation in Central African Republic. I think for the Secretary General, the involvement of NGOs in the Central African Republic is a very important one, and he thanked them for their efforts. They discussed the complex situation, the humanitarian situation, and the upcoming renewal of the peace.
And do you have any view that the vice chairman of the NGO committee was detained by police for sexual harassment or groping? And some people have said this is sort of a bad black eye for the UN system, that this is the individual who's the second secretary of the Sudanese mission that's letting NGOs in or not. Does the Secretary General, given what he said about gender equity, et cetera, have any view on this?
A couple of things to make clear. The role of the NGO chair is elected by member states. It's up to those member states who make up the committee to make a decision based on what happened. We clearly stand firmly against any sort of harassment or of illegal or bad behavior. This is now an issue between the United States and the government of Sudan. I think as a matter of practice, we would expect anyone who has the privilege of immunity to obey the rules and the regulations and the laws and the customs of the country in which they work. And I do want to make it clear that this person is not a UN employee or UN staffer, as it's been said in some of the press coverage. Evelyn, and then we'll go to the back.
Human Rights Watch has a report saying that Rwanda is illegally detaining and torturing civilians. Is there is anyone looking into it?
I don't have anything on that, but I will look into it.
Yeah, I meant to ask you.
Okay.
Diplomat. So.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Stéphane. I wanted to ask, what happened to the report on the death of Dag Hammarskjöld? How much?
I think it will be out as a public document probably, I was told by the end of October. It's going through the translation process. And I'm told Ismail and John Ging will be the stakeout briefly, but Matthew, always a pleasure to take one last question.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'd asked, last Friday, the representative of India and the Sixth Committee asked for some information from the Secretariat, specifically on what you were just talking about, immunity, asking for data of total number of registered cases of serious misconduct conducted by UN personnel and whether the UN waived immunity or didn't. I tried to ask Brendan yesterday, but I didn't hear back from him. Is the Secretariat going to provide the information?
I'll check.
And could you provide it publicly?
I will check. Thank you. Good day.